I'm sure you've heard of this phrase, build, people will come. What movie? Field of Dreams. All right. That's Kevin Costner. I've heard this actually in a lot of companies that we work with, to just say, okay, I'm building somewhere in far-flung area on an island, primarily because they feel if they build something, maybe even on a luxurious level, or whatever level, they'll actually make it. Tajara's adage, you can't build there unless you can get there. Why? You need to get people, either roads, bridges, seaport, planes. This is basic in terms of putting or setting up any hospitality projects. When I go to a new destination, I look at tourism numbers, but I put it on the side. Research at one point, but you gotta see how consumer works. Where do they first drop when, let's say for instance, Iloilo. Iloilo is pretty much where the point where they distribute seven other areas, primarily because then they drop one place, pharmaceutical when they launch Iloilo, consumer Iloilo. So you look at that in terms of how you build. Tourism, yes, at one point. However, you have to always look at consumer index when it comes to how they do purchase. You have to understand what market is. Tourism arrivals, I don't know if this is maybe our strongest year, 6.6 million arrivals, but you're looking at 10% year on year. So when do we actually get to that number that we want? The top three arrivals, we have, the top three usually, it's like Korea, we have China, and also the US. What was interesting with China, though, is that it has the highest growth, which is 43%. China in general, but if you look at other countries, say Thailand has about 35 million tourist arrivals. 8.5% is pretty much just for Phuket. If you look at Indonesia, 14 million arrivals, of which 6.5, which is pretty much what we got for the entire Philippines, is just Bali in Indonesia. So there's a lot that we still have to do. But people keep forgetting. People look at tourist numbers, foreign tourist numbers. They keep forgetting domestic numbers. And our domestic numbers have actually gone to almost, 70, 80 million. These are people traveling across the country. So when you say about, I don't know if you remember the dawn of the budget airlines, it has actually gotten everyone, every person, to travel. Ask your staff. Your staff would probably cut out the back page of Philippine Airlines or Cebu Pacific. I'm sure you do as well. And you kind of earmark places that you've been and places you want to actually go. And this whole bucket list thing, right? So you say, I have to go here, and places like that. I have to do surfing, you have to do. I just got into free diving. So when I go from one island to the next, the first thing, the motivation for me is their free diving. I don't like the scuba dive because I feel there's a tank chained to my leg because I just really want to fly the next day or in the afternoon. So free dive in the morning, meeting at noon, out by 2. So people, this is the way how people work this time. Tourism, GDP, tourism and hospitality contributed to about 8.7% to GDP. Employment is about 20%, which is actually a good number. However, if you look at next year, we're only moving at another 10% increase, but I'm wondering about China, on how much business they're also going to give us. The goal of the government is to reach, about 12 million tourist arrivals in 2020. But again, or 2022, but again, look at the domestic numbers by then. We should be about 100 million tourist arrivals. We distributed the 7107 newsletter earlier. This is the pipeline that we've only captured. 100 hotels being built, 20,000 keys. 50% are pretty much in Metro Manila. Outside of Metro Manila, another 50%. 50% are global brands, of which, if you look at the domestic numbers like SEDA and all that, That's another 50%. But a lot of the homegrown brands are actually also spreading around the country. So what does that say about our economy? 90% are local developers. So what's the driving force? Did I overpress? Did I overclick? Oh, there. Money. My favorite subject. Okay, there's so much money going on. I don't know about your businesses, but obviously in the hospitality, we've never seen this uprise growth. Okay. If there's anything that we recognize, developers in Metro Manila are actually spreading through Visayas and Mindanao, and you have money coming from these two big areas moving into Metro Manila. I guess it has something to do with the president being a representative of largely Mindanao that has given a lot of people more courage as well. But we've never seen so much growth in terms of hospitality. And I think also, I think real estate has been there for a long time. I mean, people keep forgetting that if you build hotels, it's real estate. Every square meter you build is development costs to you. And you've also got to get your returns based on per square meter. 75 flagship projects being done by the government right now, of which 6 airports, 9 railways, bus terminals, pretty much getting people to move. But we want to see this in action. I know there's a lot of plan, but implementation is also very critical. We know for a fact that the airport in Mactan is opening maybe, third quarter of this year. Then you have Bohol either before the end of this year or even early next year. Where do I point the clicker? Okay, I'm back to China. China has 150 million outbound travelers. 150 million. Our population's barely what, 110, 105? That's how much people leaves China to travel everywhere else. Their favorite top 2 countries to travel last year was Thailand and Japan. Thailand, I think, was about 8.7, close to 9 million, and Japan also got something like 7 or 8 million tourist arrivals in their own specific countries. So it's a big number. My challenge to a lot of developers, especially to you, is that you have to understand China market. You do have this big mass market coming, but you also do have the more affluent Chinese. After Aman Pulo, it's just that no one dared enough to actually come up with a luxurious project just like Aman. So it's something to look into. Another one is staycation. Again, prepping, you have a strong domestic market. You have the barkada nights or the, friends and family, pretty much colleagues. If you go to a new hotel, normally the weekend after, if it's near, say, Metro Manila, you'd like to also come back again. But this is one market, very strong market. In fact, sometimes the occupancy goes up during weekends, primarily for the staycationers. And again, it has something to do with new money. I mean, if you look at 10 years ago and 10 years now, money 10 years ago was totally different from money 10 years, I mean now. Ask your mom, how many Hermes bags does she have, or Ferragamo? You ask the child, the daughter, every season, Fendi, Gucci. You're talking about how much money people spend right now. Now, this refers to, that's why I go back to, don't only look at tourism numbers. We've never looked at it. We're an analyst. We look at strategies in terms of how to do highest and best use for any project. But we look at consumer drives. How do they spend in that particular market? When we did, say, Red Planet years ago, we're on to about 18 of the properties already, but when we started, we looked at the area, and when we have to evaluate, we had to look at, let's say, does it have a Starbucks in the area? That means people can pay 150 or 200 pesos cup of coffee. That's how simplified. You have to break it down. And sometimes statistics Don't listen. You don't forget the gut feel. I mean, I see a lot of the entrepreneurs here. Don't forget your gut feel. Sometimes there's something the market says that we refuse to listen. Too much stats, too much research. Again, this is pretty much the staycationers. But one thing interesting is that it's a very convention or conference market still. You have the business aspect, and people kind of, even NGOs and even government people, they like to conference. Even if you say you have social media, you can do video calls, people still like to see each other. They still like to meet. They still like to convene. So that's your market, especially with this whole world of what? Working workspace. Now, if you look at the new hotels, I wasn't used to 14 square meters. I think my closet's a little bigger. But you can actually put in 14 square meters where you have a decent bed and a toilet and shower, and it works. But what's working right now, again, go back to real estate, is that you build, and sometimes the 14 square meters doesn't necessarily have to be budget. I've seen one like Yotel, you try, because I try all types of hotels. So Yotel just opened in Singapore. It used to be just airport hotel lounges in near the airport, or even like a small room, like a capsule room. But if you go to the one in Singapore, wow, it works. I mean, 14 square meters. But when you go down to the public area, you have common space where people actually enjoy. That's the reason why the hostel business actually works now, because of communal spaces that's being shared by a lot of people. You gotta think about how the new generation actually thinks. So what's hot in hospitality? This is where the 50% of the new arrivals you're talking about the global brands. This Conrad opened like about a year and a half ago. You have Grand Hyatt, but you have a lot more. Both Westin and Sheraton's coming back in town. I mean, in fact, they're going to be here. Hilton's coming back again. You even have Courtyard by Marriott in Iloilo. So you could just imagine all the brands interesting. And I talk to the operators, sometimes they're willing to cut their specs in order to go to Boracay. So Philippines maybe has been out 10 years, 10 years ago, but it's very hot now. This is interesting. Well, depends. I normally advise clients when it's like 150 or 200 keys, just be safe, go for a major operator. The problem is normally connectivity, you have distribution network. It's so important for you to, when you search, to be found by your clients. So it's so critical that you get into this whole distribution network. You can't believe the enormous support when it comes to professionals, the talents, and the experts. However, homegrown brands have also been successful. Seda, for instance, which is Ayala owned. When it comes to Seda, what they do is that they build it in areas where they also have a big real estate, so it preps the property. If you have a hotel component in, let's say, in your estate, it actually gets the real estate up as well. What was interesting with Seda, when I talked to the president, is that he says that they compete with another group, which could be an Alveo or any of the groups in Ayala. So that means their yields has to be pretty much the same. There was a time wherein when we would look at, say, families, for instance, or even private funds, they look at homegrown brands, they're developing their own brands primarily because it's a sexy asset. Not sexy when you're not making your cash flow. So Crimson is part of the Philinvest group. I mean, you're talking about everyone trying to build their own brand. There are challenges, yes. So if you cannot build to scale, it's tough for anyone. But resorts at one point, you can actually deliver the numbers when it's resort. You just have to know how to build. Space plan is critical, what to put in the location. So that's actually very important. Independent and boutique brands. I'm not sure if you heard of the Henry. Cute, nice, boutique property in Pasay, but they also have one in Cebu, and now the expansion is in Panglao, and I think also one in off Cebu in, I forgot that island, where the sanctuary is. But These are very interesting brands as well. So these are homegrown. A new concept that was introduced is Joy Nostalgia. Joy Nostalgia is in Ortigas. It used to be Oakwood. But what's interesting is that it's the first asset of Accor, wherein what they've done, or I would say first managed company of Accor, on a white label. It's never done before. So again, good project. An operator can also work with you on that one. But this is quite interesting. It's very unusual. That's why I say we've never experienced doing it also in other countries. So budget and economy hotels, we work with both Red Planet and Hop In. These are both hotel investment funds. When they started, they came to the country, they just say, we have money, where to put? So put the map of the Philippines. You can't advise unless you've been to most of them. The thing with budget hotels, you have to really roll it out. It's you know, I would say it's a sari-sari store kind of concept in terms of how you make it in the business. But when you actually make it, and people don't think that when you're selling budget, you gotta be in the secondary or tertiary area when you're choosing land. No, the way we broke the game was, or we changed the game was that it has to be in a corner. You get down from the transport, you actually get to the hotel right away, which we had to get in prime locations. Even if we had to pay top money, it doesn't matter. So our last acquisition was late last year for Hop In, which is dual with, it's owned by Erwan, which is one of the Thailand's top hotel developers also. It's right at the center of Cebu Business Park. So we're building 450 rooms, of which you have a Hop In and a Holiday Inn, because it's only one you want to optimize FAR. So we're coming up with a 450 room property there. So you can do we call it combo, but it's a combination of, let's say, a 2-star and a 4-star. Because again, depending on the location, you can actually capture both markets. There are challenges in terms of technical aspects and planning. It doesn't matter. It will work. So Ibis is coming, which is in Cubao, but also Holiday Inn. I think you've seen rebranding. What does it say when you rebrand? I mean, you're talking about something like, I think this is 600 rooms, if I'm not mistaken, 6, close to 800, or maybe 8. If you're in the business of development in terms of, let's say, Mega World, wherein you're into real estate, sometimes you want to leave it to the professionals to do management. You realize the management, putting a team together, putting in distribution, the network, the sales, the global, it's a major headache. Leave it to the professionals. Hostels. So you have, I own Junction, which is in Poblacion, but at the same time, you have all other hostels, or what we call poshtels, that's actually getting into the market. Because you're looking at could be cheap travels or whatever, but the thing is you're getting a lot of people to actually come in. So you're targeting different people from different budgets. But this is, we saw this actually we saw this growing, plus at the same time, even Accor has come up with J&J, wherein it's actually pretty much targeted to millennial travelers as well. But the differentiation right now is that the rooms are not just basic, it's really something of quality, but the public area is something that's a bit more communal. I think this is something that would interest a lot of people. Alternative ownership. We talked about a lot of the variants in terms of hotels. But when you look at alternative ownership, this is pretty much for investors, owners, developers who have, let's say, a piece of land, and it's not mixed use. It's not totally mixed use. It's a lot of looking ways to monetize undeveloped, could be in resort destinations, could be a city area, but something, let's say you have existing inventory that you want to move. This is something to consider. Timeshare, fractional ownership. Well, timeshare, going back to timeshare, people got burned maybe like 15 years ago, I think, because of timeshare, 20 years. I'm not sure if you bought timeshares in the past. But because it's badly managed, the promise, it was an overkill in terms of promise, but delivery was so bad. But it has changed. You have to look at who the operator is. You have to make sure who the developer is. You want to see how the rollout is. Fractional ownership, there's only one group, which I'll show later on, who did it. I was trying to do that some years ago, but I think something to do with the legal on how to work, and maybe it's too complicated, but one group did it. You have the private residences, branded residences, and condo hotels. But for branded residences, what's interesting with branded residences is that it gets the price point up in real estate by about 20 or 30%. So even if, let's say, you're competing, and that's maybe one sample that we've done in Cebu for Sheraton, is that we got the highest price in the market, and we didn't care whether it was in Mactan or Cebu. We got the property, we were involved in terms of acquisition, we looked at project, we scaled it, but at the same time, the goal was to open, to do a startup price, even if it's only on plans. And if this is the delivery of one existing project already, we benchmarked the price and just went for it. We were totally people in Cebu were saying, no, you can't charge this, and so on. But most of the buyers are also foreign. So it's a combination of both. But one thing interesting is that for branded properties, look at the Shangri-La. The first one here was the Raffles, and they started what? 150,000 per square. And the trading for real estate at the time for high-end was only what? 80 to 100. Then here comes Raffles selling it 150. But now, Shangri-La started at what? 350? 320? Now I'm not sure. 400 now or 450? There's value in getting a brand. Because the consumer now thinks, if I get a brand, if I sign up, the brand will also protect. I mean, they won't also come up with facilities that's just leveled to whatever. They have to make sure they up their game as well. But at the same time, what's interesting is that management is back to the operator. So it's managed like a hotel. And I think there's a big lifestyle change right now. When you want to downscale, you want to cut down, forego the big house, you want to go to, say, a really nice upscale condominium, but you want really upscale, where you call for room service, cleaning. I mean, I see that movement already when it comes to lifestyle change. Vacation homes, these are, I think most of you have also been maybe one or two of these projects. The latest I've been to is at Baguio Mountain Lodges. 50 to 70 million, one unit. I think how many was sold? 15? 15, close to 20? Unbelievable. But again, you're talking about a total different lifestyle of people. Timeshare works in terms of, say, you have existing inventory, you have about, if you're running about 70% occupancy, there's still a space in terms of, say, putting 10 or 15 or 20 of your extra keys into the timeshare. It works. Again, so this one works well. Either you do it in terms of pre-planning, or you can actually decide when you've actually turned over already. But these are the ones that I see that's most successful is Astoria, because the model is really built on partly timeshare. So they build projects, or they build in different areas. I believe they have about 5 already in their portfolio, of which when they look at the timeshare business, it's actually incorporated in terms of building. So you got to decide in terms of, that's a smart way in terms of moving into, say, a timeshare. But again, you can also decide to do timeshare right after you've put together the project or the hotel. Fractional ownership. This is done by Century. So you have Novotel. The way they did it is that it's 1 unit, 4 people buys into the unit, but the price per quadrant is as much as, say, a small unit somewhere else. It makes it's good in terms of addressing the need of the market. So you have OFWs from Singapore, from Japan, we're in fact, the market was not only OFWs, it was Japanese themselves or Singaporeans themselves or other nations. The thing is that they wanted only, say, could be 15 or 30 days a year. The rest, they just wanted someone to maintain it, but still get recurring income. So you have capital appreciation also the time that you want to sell. So these are things that's quite interesting. And sometimes when you deal with the operator, you can also lock them, say with, it could be a 15-year management contract or a 20-year management contract. Again, depends on how you want to sell it. But if you're doing residential, that means you want longer term. But for fractional or timeshare, the shorter that you deal with them, the better for you too. Condo apartments. There's one Anya, which is managed by Fuego, but what's interesting with Citadines and also Dusit is that you see them rolled around the country now. Again, you have the timeshare component. It's a condominium and at the same time apartment. It's not fractional because you actually own the particular unit. So that's something that encourages the developer to actually also build. So they have to own land and maybe own, say, 30% of the units, and the rest is pretty much sold on market. How many minutes do I still have? Sorry, time. Sorry, okay. Life's a Beach. We have 3 locations, top 3, pretty much in the top 30 best islands in the world under Condé Nast, so which is Boracay, Cebu, and Palawan. We talked about Boracay earlier. I think my only question right there would be, I think government also has to decide there should be islands wherein there should be a no gaming zone, because you cannot build casino in every island that entices tourists. So we have to define it now. This is the next. Cebu, not only Mactan, but outside the northern part or southern part, it's encouraging. Anything, hopefully no more than 2 hours from the time you land, you drive through, is beautiful. Coron, it's okay, but you need to carefully select the property. Panglao definitely, and also El Nido. Siargao, La Union, unless you're really smitten in the place, go for it. Road trips, please build in Cavite. I mean, build somewhere where it's only an hour drive from Metro Manila. Trust me, minimum 70% occupancy. Zambales, Tagaytay, of course, but Baguio is also churning up. So you have to look at experiential travel. This is pretty much what people want. So it's a cultured coffee, the craft beers and so on. Happy millennials, but come on. You also what you call feelennials, feeling millennial. That's all of us. So find your wave. Thank you.